Chapter 456. The members eagerly placed bets as they watched two identically appearing individuals compete against each other for the first time since joining the ranks. The buoyant atmosphere persisted even after Kishir made his appearance. It's good to see everyone in good health. We are delighted to see you as well, Commander. Your eyesight seems to have improved remarkably. A member of the cavalry, known for his cheeky behavior, raised his voice and saluted Kishir. The others joined in, cheering and offering their own salutations. It was hard to believe that these were the same people who had been terrified at the sight of Kishir during their induction ceremony. They could do these things because they knew Kishir was the kind of man who would take such jokes with a smile. And then Kishir, just as everyone had hoped, boosted the troops' morale with a smile more radiant than ever. Thank you, Joyce. However, it's too early to celebrate. A wonderful vacation and delicious meals await us when we return. Let's all give it a little more effort until the very end. Really? Thank you. Amid a sky-high round of applause and laughter, Yidhir quietly observed Kishir's face. No one there could even suspect that Kishir would soon be meeting a dying emperor upon his return. Who could imagine what lay behind that smooth smile? He was so adept at concealing all his emotions and smiling. For his cavalry, which was rejoicing, and for his one and only brother, he would keep his feelings in check for as long as needed. That was the kind of a man Kishir was. There was a time when Yidhir thought he knew nothing about him, and also a time when he felt that he knew him better than anyone else. But now, in a different sense, Yidhir felt as though he had come to understand something he didn't know about Kishir. A complex and somewhat bitter emotion filled him, making it hard to say he was pleased. Yidhir lowered his eyes. Your Majesty, Duke Paleta has sent word. He plans to arrive in the capital as scheduled. The emperor, lying down, rose at the steward's low and formal voice. A rare expression of sincerity appeared over his pallid face. Good. He has arrived promptly. Is everything prepared for my departure? Yes. And the Empress? She has already arrived just outside the Sun Palace. I can't keep her waiting too long. The Emperor nodded and stood up on his own. Although his movements lacked strength, he did not wobble, thanks to his slow pace. The elderly steward silently assisted the Emperor with his clothing and preparations. It was far different from the light and simple attire the Emperor usually wore. Today, the Emperor was dressed in a full formal robes befitting the ruler of the empire. He wrapped a piece of blue cloth from his shoulder to his waist and threaded a cord of twisted gold through his cloak. Age-old jewels inherited through a millennium adorned him from head to toe. Finally, he put on white gloves embroidered with luminescent threads and donned the golden crown, the symbol of the Our Empire. The Emperor, now fully prepared, chuckled softly as he looked at his ample robe. I have lost so much weight. The robe is still too large. Or have I lost even more weight in the meantime? The steward bowed his head deeply in a gesture of regret. It's not your fault. Don't bow your head like that. Standing before a mirror that reflected his entire figure, the Emperor felt as if he was crushed under the weight of his clothes. No amount of makeup could conceal his pallid complexion or cracked lips. His emaciated frame was beyond help. In fact, the golden crown and long cloak were only making him feel more suffocated and burdened. He wanted to shed them at once, but he couldn't. Turning his back to the mirror, the Emperor walked towards a door he had not used in a long time. As the steward led the way and knocked on the door, Knights standing outside pulled the handle. The moment the doors to the second palace opened for the first time in what seemed like ages, many felt a swirl of mixed emotions. The emperor proceeded outside, passing knights who knelt in reverence. Numerous people waiting in front of two twin-like carriages bowed their heads in unison as a mark of respect. Simultaneously, the door of the carriage on the right swung open, and the empress leapt out. "Your Majesty!" Upon seeing the emperor after such a long time, the eyes of the empress reddened slightly. Biting her red lips, she struggled to find words for a moment before finally suppressing her sorrow and breaking into a smile. "I am truly pleased to be with you on a day like this. Please enter the carriage." The emperor stood next to the empress in front of their respective carriages. Long ago, they always rode in a single carriage, but now they never did. The reason was something neither wished to speak of. Before climbing into the carriage, the emperor quietly opened his mouth, his back to the empress. "I feel the same. ... The empress hesitated for a moment. The emperor entered the carriage without meeting her gaze. "The emperor departs," the knight announced in a deep and majestic voice, pulling the reins vigorously. The grand procession began to move. As the parade passed the boundary separating Zone 1 and Zone 2, the guards holding the line swallowed nervously and knelt. Beyond the border stood a woman dressed in a long blue robe typical of a mage, and following her were other mages. "All from the Imperial Mage Office greet your Majesties," she courteously greeted, falling into a step at the head of the parade. As they moved from Zone 2 to Zone 3, generals and soldiers with graying hairs bowed their heads respectfully. "Imperial General Gerald Mucker is here at your Majesty's summons." The crowd surrounding the carriage grew larger. All who knew the advancing procession couldn't hide their astonished expressions as they knelt. As they neared Zone 7, the parade lengthened, and the streetscape became increasingly intricate and opulent. Trees towering over the main roads were adorned with a myriad of colorful flowers that fluttered in the wind, filling the air with their sweet fragrance. Finally, when they reached the boundary between Zone 6 and Zone 7, the carriages halted once more. Standing there were Imperial Knights dressed in gold-adorned armor and uniforms, along with Theodore Fontaine and handful of cavalry members who had stayed behind in the capital dressed in black uniforms, including Stibor Randley. "Imperial Knights Commander Theodore Fontaine greets your Majesties." "Cavalry Deputy Commander Stibor Randley greets your Majesties." As the two stepped forward to greet them, the assembled crowd erupted in cheers. "My God, the Emperor really has come! The Emperor, here!" Some Imperial Knights frowned at the outburst but ultimately joined the front of the procession without a word. The Emperor's procession finally came to a halt at a massive square near the south gate, at the end of the 4th district. Everything was perfectly set up there, according to plan, to welcome someone. Though reluctant, the Emperor could not hesitate his curiosity about the interior landscape of his carriage. He glanced at the many nobles in attendance, their eyes filled with a mix of apprehension and curiosity, and offered them a cold, icy smile. However, his expression softened astonishingly when he saw the members of the cavalry, dressed in black, began to enter through the gate. "Well, shall we go meet Kishir now?" "What on earth is going on? What's with these flowers? Can someone please explain to me? Do I look like I know?" Actually, Weren't there other knight brigades supposed to have accomplished great deeds and returned today as well? That's the only thing I can think of. I'm so scared right now that I want to go to the bathroom. Yudhir faintly heard the mutterings of the cavalry members, their voices a blend of bewilderment and fear over the deafening cheers, and internally agreed with them. I really have no idea what's going on. Until they arrived in the capital, nothing out of the ordinary had happened. No anomalies or significant changes were felt. The issue arose when they dismounted at the gate that screened entrance outside the south gate of the capital. Yudhir assumed they would be let right in as soon as their identity as cavalry was known, but for some reason, approval took an unusually long time. Even more baffling were the massive crowds and tremendous cheers that began to rise as they approached the south gate, not to mention the petals scattered all the way beyond the gate. If there were a welcome ceremony, Keshir would have informed them in advance. However, Keshir had not said anything about the situation. When Yudhir's questioning eyes met his, Keshir made a face as if he too was not completely without suspicions and suggested that they simply go in and see. And so they found themselves in this situation. The endless cheers that dulled their ears, flowers showered over their carriages, almost covering the entire road. Is this really a cheer for us? Yudhir watched the spectacle and felt it was incredibly awkward and distant. If he had experienced something similar in his past life, perhaps he would understand. But even then, the cavalry had never received such a reception for accomplishing any mission. Even though they were treated with no shortage of respect, most of them were commoners who lived in the emperor's shadow. They were not people who needed such an extravagant welcoming ceremony. But what was this? I think I'm getting a hang of it now. It was then that Keshir spoke. He was looking through the window of the carriage at something far off, smiling. It appears His Majesty wanted to give us a surprise gift, even keeping it a secret from me.